So we are talking product-led growth in B2B versus B2C. So let me pull up some of these questions here to get us kicked off real quick. But before we do that, why don't we take a second and kind of introduce ourselves and what we do. And I didn't even take a chance to introduce myself, but I will very briefly. I'm Kyle, and I work at a company called Open Space as senior product manager there, and I'll take a little bit of time to introduce myself a little bit later. But why don't we start here? Why don't you guys each take a second to introduce yourselves?
Sure. So my name is Abel Ramos. I am the Senior Product Operations Manager at a company called Simple Practice. Our business is helping our therapist friends in the healthcare industry manage their day-to-day practices. And so we have software that allows them to do everything from billing to insurance to taking notes for their clients or their customers, their patients. We also do telehealth, and so we have a one-stop shop place where you can do everything from practice management. But prior to that, I was at two companies called Princess Cruises. I was a product manager there. And then after that, I left for a company called Ring. So I don't know if you're really familiar with Ring, the video doorbell. So I was with them as a product manager as well. And so ultimately, I landed here at Simple Practice. So that's Abel.
Yeah, Mike Cotamio. I am based out of Phoenix, Arizona. I have been in product for about 7 years. I'm a senior PM currently at Klaviyo. Klaviyo is an email marketing automation platform for SMBs and mid-sized businesses. We have a global presence, mostly e-commerce online. And prior to Klaviyo, I was at HubSpot. I led the automation product at HubSpot. And then was also at a company called ActiveCampaign prior to that, which is also a marketing automation platform. And started product at another marketing automation platform. That's kind of been my world in product called Infusionsoft. So,
okay, awesome. Well, it is great to have you both talking with us. So I'm excited to talk about this. But let's start off with, how does PLG or product-led growth vary between B2B versus B2C in the experience that you two have had?
Yeah, I think most of my entire product career has been in B2B space. So I think I've seen kind of an interesting layer of it. When I say that, I mean all the products I've worked in, they're a B2B product, but they've served a B2C customer in some capacity. So I've had to keep sort of really both users in mind when developing product, but mostly have been focused on B2B, on the B2B side, which has been mostly SMBs in the space I've been. So, but yeah, I've had to kind of think of, I think, both sides of it, which has been an interesting place to be.
So yeah, at Princess Cruises, I was very B2C. So I was a product manager for the e-commerce site at Princess Cruises. There's a different way you think about it because you're dealing directly with the consumer, and a lot of the work you do there is takes on a very emotional standpoint because you're trying to get somebody to make a quick decision to make a big purchase, to take a cruise wherever in the world we travel to. Now, a little bit with Ring also, I was doing e-commerce there as well, so that was all about home security and safety. So you were playing to that type of emotion for that type of consumer. Ring also was going more into the industrial section of it for larger corporations and security. So then we took on a more B2B type of operation as well. And so that you have to think about it a little bit differently. And it's also the same at Simple Practice, where the decisions on whether or not to go with a product or to take some service that you're offering, it's not really more emotional. It's now very more about rate of return. Like, how is this going to help my business? And the time it takes you to try to get somebody to make a decision to go with your product is a lot longer because there's a lot more questions that need to be answered ahead of time when you're trying to get that person to make that decision to go with your product. And so I think for me, the biggest difference I've seen is consumer is very emotional and they can do it very quick, whereas B2B, it's very like, it's a drawn out process, but you work with them to make sure that the rate of return, the options that they're going to have long-term are going to meet their needs. And so I think that's been the biggest difference for me, is just the two different approaches.
Okay.
Yeah. I would definitely plus one that, like, the decision process in a B2B space is a lot more drawn out. There's a lot more decision makers and hands in the pot that need to play with the product, and really, you have to really understand the different jobs. And I've personally applied jobs to be done and other frameworks to really get deep with the personas of all those decision making elements. And so I think, yeah, I definitely would agree with that, it's a drawn out process.
Okay, that's really interesting. So in kind of what I'm hearing is, on the consumer side, you have maybe more emotion in consumer decision making, and in B2B side, there is more of a process in decision making. So as we approach that as like product teams and organizations, are there ways that we should be thinking about that as we approach both our processes and the way that we build and the way that we are thinking about our product and our development and our go-to-market, and ways that you two have thought about that as you have created and launched products?
Yeah, I definitely agree that you have to know who your audience is on the B2B side. There's a lot more stakeholders involved, like you said, and so you're playing to different people in that organization who are making the ultimate decision on the purchase. So you definitely have to know a lot about personas. So you have like a lot of CTOs that are making decisions. You have a lot of CPOs that are helping make the decision, and even on the engineering side, you have a lot of them who are also doing that. So from my perspective, when I've thought about how we're going to go to like market about a B2B product, like I have to like know who I'm actually talking to first, and sort of tailor the product sometimes and build it out in a way that is going to resonate with them the most. And so that becomes a little bit more challenging, where I'm approaching it from two different ways. Like I know I knew who my audience is, but I also, from my product's perspective, I need to build it out so it's going to be able to serve multiple other audiences besides the one I'm going after at that particular time. So as much as we don't like to do custom type approaches, sometimes we do, and then sometimes we can build out our product where it'll apply to multiple different audiences that we can have out there. Whereas on the B2C side, it's a lot easier. Like consumers there, because they are so emotional, like they are thinking about like, okay, this is like a one-time use for me, or this could be a product like I don't need. It's about need there. So like I need this at this moment in time, whereas B2B is like, I need this for the long run, and I'm gonna do such a heavy investment in it. Like this has got to be something that's gonna be able to grow with my business as well. So a lot of different considerations. And so building out the product is like, can I do a custom job that they're asking for sometimes, or can I build it in such a way that it can unfold and grow with different audiences, not the one I'm working with at that moment in time.
Do you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I mean, I would agree with all of that. It's, yeah, really, I guess I'm looking at it again very much from the B2B lens as well. So I'm glad Abel's here to kind of give the B2C side. But yeah, it's really getting, I guess, yeah, knowing your audience, really getting in depth with knowing your user and what are the problems and challenges that they're running into day to day. The problems of a CEO are going to vary vastly from a marketing ops person that's sending out email campaigns every day. So I think, yeah, getting really intimate, I guess, that sounds weird, but getting really intimate with the user on what their problems are at each persona, I think is something I've applied in all companies I've been at. And yeah, I think that's really helped make sure you're prioritizing the right problems correctly.
Yeah, okay. So. Now, we've kind of touched on this a little bit in a couple different ways, but obviously, as we're building products, a lot of people are involved in that, whether that's on the customer side or whether that's within our organizations, from the different decision makers on the B2B side within an organization or within our own organizations, sales and marketing and teams. How does that change the approach on a B2B side or within a B2C product organization? What have you two seen on both of those?
Yeah, I think for me it's partnering super close with product marketing with sales. I mean, sales are your front line, so I think really like going off of what I said earlier about getting to know your user and what their problems are. I've relied heavily on that data point of just sales and using tools like Gong and just really getting to know also just the market. I think that opens up sort of a market lens of what are the problems in the space that your product or your company can solve for. So yeah, I think it's just really building a partnership with those teams that I could see applying the same on a B2C side, I guess.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think on the B2B side, we get feedback from a lot of internal customers. So customer success team who are dealing on the front line with all of our customers, they take all of those questions that they're getting from our customers there. We do have a product marketing side. We do have a security and compliance team that also, so we're getting all of this information from everybody on how and what the product should ultimately look like. One of the things that our product marketing team is doing for us now is really trying to help us understand like our total addressable market. And that's a big thing that we're trying to do. And so when we go to build out the different products, not only are we trying to satisfy and take into consideration all the feedback we're getting from all these different areas, we also have to look at what the market is also telling us and what our future potential for growth is going to look like there. So that also helps dictate a lot of how the product will ultimately get built out as well. And so B2B side, there's just so many different stakeholders involved. They're going to have all their different opinions, but you really have to like, for the long run, if I'm going to take the time to build this product, like what is it going to do for us in the future, and sort of work backwards and come up with different phases to your release as well. On the B2C side, I think that one is also important because when we're building out products and we're trying to sell to our customers there, like you really have to like think about like, okay, this is probably like something a product they're going to use in the immediate future. Like it may not have long-term, but if you can make a connection there with how they're thinking about, like in the example of Princess Cruises, like we built out cruise itineraries that would take you to certain places, but the object, once we get you on board, is to make you come back for another trip. So we're putting together all of the information we're getting about how you decided to make your decision now, the product and what it looks like, the itineraries we're building out, and then we're trying to use that same information to build out other itineraries that we think will resonate with you as well. And so there's just a lot of information you collect with a lot of data that gets collected there. So there's just so many opportunities on the B2C side of how you build that product out just based on all the data you collect. On the B2B side, there's just a lot of stakeholders that are giving you that options as well. And then also for us, you really got to think about what that total addressable market is going to look like ultimately. So.
Okay, that's awesome. I want to double click on on the customer side a little bit, because I think this is really fascinating and something that, I think about a lot. How do we address some of the issues, especially trying to be more product led, that may come up, that may kind of sabotage some of the decision making down the road? Because obviously, like when we get into B2B decision making, there could be a lot of people who may have a say in that decision-making process. And that can be somewhat apparent. Like we've been going through some tool selection, and this is top of mind for me on my team because I'm leading the tool selection, and some of you may be part of that. And there are a lot of stakeholders involved in that, and any person may be able to kind of say, no, we don't want that. And so as product people, as we build those things, being able to understand like, hey, and someone from finance may be able to say no, or somebody from the team may be able to, or up to the CEO. And how do we build in such a way that like we can overcome all those obstacles? So taking all that into consideration, but there's also that on the consumer side that may be a little bit more hidden. That it may be something for we may be building something for a family, and it may be targeted more towards a certain member of the family, but the grandparents may be able to say no or something. I don't know what the scenarios might be like. It may be for dad, but mom may be able to say no, or whatever the case may be. How have you guys approached that, both on the B2B side and the B2C side, in understanding the stakeholders and taking all that into consideration in order to really be able to drive, like we're talking about, the product-led growth forward, so that we can overcome some of those obstacles throughout the full life cycle of the product and throughout the process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, it's always keeping the customer in mind, which in my case, the customer's the B2B side, but also the customer's customer in mind. And in the companies I've worked for, again, I'll use an email marketing example. I have the customer, the end user that's building the email and sending it out to their list, their recipient. But I also have to think of, on the receiving end, how is that customer, of my customer, how are they perceiving that experience? How are they, is the email clean? Is it, is it easy to understand? So I think I've had that mindset just in any of the major products that my teams have built, having the customer's customer as a persona. Again, I think it's multi-dimensional a little bit with thinking of it that way and just not one-sided on just the B2B side.
I think for me, the approach I take on the B2B side is because there are so many different stakeholders, you almost have to know like certain languages that each of your stakeholders kind of speak. So if it's like the CEO, my language with him is going to be very financial because that's at the end of the day, he's responsible for all that. Somebody from the finance team, I'm going to explain like, here is our potential opportunity if we launch a product like this. If it's security, we're going to go down that route and explain like, we're going to be covered under, when we build this product from a security standpoint, we're very HIPAA, have to be very HIPAA compliant in the work that we do. So that's a big consideration, and whenever we build something, like we have to do that. So for me on the B2B side, it's really about speaking different languages and knowing the appropriate way to approach how I'm going to convince them that this is something that will eventually lead to product-led growth. And so I take that approach. On the B2C side, that's a little bit different because you have to know like who the decision maker there. On many cases, we've done a lot of studies, at least on the travel side of things. Like traditionally, it's the wife or the grandparent or the grandmother who are making those decisions, and then the husband or grandfather get to have a little say in it. And so we have to like tailor our message to those decision makers because like it's such a large purchase, but the experience you're going to get out of it for like your entire family is going to be different. So from that standpoint, like we tailor our message to what they are most going to be concerned about from a family experience. You tailor the message about like, this is like the things you're going to learn on an experience like that. So there are different ways, different touch points you can hit as part of going to building out a product. Like you want some fun opportunities if you go on a cruise. So you're going to build your itinerary to go stop at different places that are going to give you those different activities you're interested in. So it's a combination of knowing who the decision maker on the B2C side is, speaking to that emotion, and then also putting together a product and building it out so that way it's going to like cover all the things that that decision maker is considering when they're deciding whether or not what cruise line to go with. So it's it's the different ways and different languages you can talk to both sides of B2B or B2C.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes so much sense. That's so good. Okay. Do either of you have maybe some examples of that you could share of any of these things that we've talked about, like in managing a product, one of some of these principles of either B2C or B2B, and how you've either overcome some of these challenges or kind of put it into practice, and what were the results of being able to do that?
Yeah, are you looking for more of a principle or anything really?
Yeah, anything. Yeah. We've kind of talked about a lot.
Yeah.
Through all of this, and maybe if you have an example of that you could share with us on when you've done some of these things.
Yeah. So for me, time to value has been a huge focus in a lot of the products I've worked in. I would say more so in the last 3 to 4 years. I think it's sort of probably been a buzzy term that's had maybe a little more focus in the product world. At HubSpot, we had a huge challenge on the automation product of just getting users onboarded and acquainted with our automation tool. It's a core product of HubSpot, and it's, people can build custom workflows to really automate their entire business. But the challenge we were seeing was new users specifically were having a hard time really learning. We had a learnability problem, and really understanding the value of building automation in their business in HubSpot. And so we were really focused on having new users specifically reach time to value faster. And so we had a huge onboarding sort of play that we did for a good 6 months, where we experimented with a lot of things like templates. We learned that users needed an element of inspiration really to get started. So we played around with templates, onboarding modals, in-help like videos, just tried different things. So I think we blended a lot of experimentation into that, just to really identify what is that sweet spot when the user actually reaches time to value, which is what we found was really, it was after sort of the aha moment. And what is time to value, right? It's really users seeing the return on their investment and coming back for more, right? It's them using your product over and over. And I don't know if anyone here is in the SaaS business, but I mean, that's really, that's a driver for us, is just keeping customers returning month after month. So yeah, that's my example, I guess, is really using that. And again, from a B2B perspective, we got really deep into what the problem space is for those different personas. And we also found that time to value is reached at different points, depending on if you're the CEO of a company versus, again, a marketing ops or service rep, that sort of thing. So yeah, that was kind of just the exercise we did. Again, a lot of heavy experimentation, a lot of journey mapping. So.
Okay, awesome.
So I think for us, going to the Ring part of what I've done, they were acquired by Amazon. Amazon, they do customer research on a daily basis. And so that carried over to Ring. And that also carries over to our work at Simple Practice as well. So one of my driving principles is exactly how is this going to impact the customer? How are they going to feel on a daily basis using our product? And so one of the things like we strive for is just doing consistent customer outreach through our CS team, or through customer panels that we're now starting up as well. And one of the things we 100% focus on is they have some great ideas. We can't always build all the great ideas, but we try to take the idea that it's going to resonate most with our audience in our group, and then build out products that way. And so anything we do, it always has to have a customer focus to it. Now that we're trying to expand into a different part of the market also, we're really learning about more of the B2B side of larger health organizations right now too. That takes on a larger, much different component and a different way of thinking about it from a customer standpoint. So that involves 100% different type of research that you have to do there. But it all comes back to eventually the customer. I think one of the big things that I learned at Ring in thinking about that, it was all about security. And so today I'm here, my family is back in California, but with Ring, one of their values that we're trying to get across to the company, to the customer was you're going to feel so much better if you know you have a Ring product that is sort of protecting your family back at home while you're here in Las Vegas at a conference. And so because we took that sort of customer mentality and really try to play that up, and we found that out through all the different research that we did, it was about security. When you're making that decision to purchase a Ring product, it's literally about your home security and what it's going to do. And so I think everything you do on a daily basis, if it all ties back to your customer, I think that's going to be where you're going to see your biggest wins at and fuel that sort of product-led growth.
Yeah, okay, that's great. In the experience that you two have had, what have been some of the most common mistakes or pitfalls that you have seen in trying to implement product-led growth, or kind of this, either the mentality or trying to use it?
Yeah, for me, I think it's been speed. So not moving fast enough in hindsight. I think what that can equate to is not taking risks enough, and I think there's a difference between taking calculated product risks versus not. So but yeah, I think things that have like contributed to that, that I've learned from, getting into like analysis paralysis, and you can really veer into that world, I think, when you're doing a lot of experimentation also. So being very well defined of like, what are you trying to learn when you're doing experiments, and when you kick off a new project or a sprint. So yeah, I think that's my answer. It's not moving fast enough. I wish I would have moved faster in some projects in hindsight. So.
I think for us, what we're trying to do as we sort of transition to more of a product-led organization, and it's always been product-led, but it's not. We've had other groups that had a say also. So one of the things we're trying to do right now is make sure that all of our product team feels empowered to make decisions on a daily basis. A lot of it has been where, okay, we need to take this up to our CPO to help weigh in and make the decision on whether or not we're going to do something. Now we're trying to strive and sort of take out that part of it. Our CPO is still involved in like what we're doing, but we're empowering all of our product managers to be able to make bigger decisions, fail fast. Like we allow them, like, okay, if you're going to do something, feel confident in it, and if it fails, great, but move on and pivot to something else. So as we've sort of tried to make that transition, it's getting everybody to feel comfortable making those decisions on a daily basis without the need to have to run it up to our CPO or even sometimes our CEO, but just go and do it and then show us the results. And then as you do that, you're going to build trust within the organization that you've taken a lot of things into consideration. So I think for us, the hardest part is getting everybody on our team to that point where they do feel comfortable making decisions on a daily basis, and just learning from those and then changing and pivot if they need to moving forward. So
that's really interesting. So what has been the reaction to some of those changes, both from the team and from leadership?
Definitely, there's some pain points involved that we've encountered for our leadership team. Like, they've been so used to making the decisions, they run it up to our board that owns Simple Practice, and they come back and like, okay, this is kind of what we're doing. Now we're trying to get to a world where like, okay, a PM can make a decision on what we're going to do, but that PM really needs to explain, like, this is like what this is, if we do this and move forward, like this is what the end result is going to be like. They have to have that great understanding, or else they can't actually move forward. So for our leadership team, it's been having to understand like they don't have to make all the decisions. They need to trust the people that they've hired. For our PM side, like they've like are still cautious because like they're still afraid like they're going to make a mistake that it could have some financial implications that could be very bad. So there's still a lot of hesitation on their part to actually be empowered to make decisions. But I think they're slowly growing into that to understand like, okay, this is not going to be so bad. We've done it. I've taken the first step. Okay, now what's the next step I need to take? So for them, it's removing that hesitation, and for leadership, it's being able to understand that they can let go. Everything's still going to be fine, but we're still going to involve people and inform them like what we're doing. So I think that's been what I've seen so far from our teams.
Yeah, that's for any of us who have been in those types of teams, like that feels like a very, very real and common thing. Yeah. Mike, I wanted to touch on what you said a little bit about the speed. Have there been decisions that you felt like could have and should have moved faster in your experience, and like looking back on them, maybe what were some of those decisions that should have potentially not fallen victim to the analysis paralysis that you kind of mentioned?
Yeah, I think that's I think some of the, like, in hindsight again, kind of going off of what Abel said as well, I guess who it affects in the company too. Like I noticed a difference, like where you've seen roadblocks from. From my experience, it usually wasn't leadership. It was more either on the marketing side or sometimes on the design side as well. Just from a design wanting to perfect create the perfect product. And on the flip side, I saw who wanted to move fast. It was usually engineering. It was usually sales, always. And so I think for me, all the companies I've worked at have had a pretty autonomous product environment. And I've seen cases even where engineering gets frustrated if you're not moving fast enough, and they take matters into their own hands sometimes, and that's never a place I want to be as a PM. And so I'm constantly making sure that like speed is, we're at the right pace of things, I guess, because it's a tricky balance, I think, too. If you're moving too fast, are you cutting corners? Are you not solving for the right problems? If you're moving too slow, again, are you getting tied down by decision making or looking into the data too much or trying to perfect a prototype too much? So I think it's a tricky balance, but those are kind of the stakeholders I've noticed. I think it affects everyone a little differently, at least in my experience.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's really interesting. Just going into that just a little bit more for you two, like how have you both found the right balance of those two things? Like, obviously we want to understand and research and find the right answers, but there's also that trade-off of, we want to move quickly and, make mistakes, kind of like you mentioned, and, get things out there. Like, what frameworks or mindsets have you two used in order to balance those things of being able to understand the problems and research, but also move quickly?
Oh, go ahead.
No, good.
For me, I think it's been two things. It's been one, problem definition. I think the times that my teams have moved slower than expected were because we were trying to solve the wrong problems, or we didn't have a clear problem definition. So I've sort of switched my mindset of having a stronger problem definition sort of phase and discovery phase, or more early up front from a build cost, overall. So that's one. Two, I think, is alignment. It's where I've seen things slow down is there's misalignment somewhere, right? It's either with, I didn't do a good job at like a kickoff or defining what we were building, or again, what the problems were, or I didn't align my marketing stakeholders, on the positioning that we wanted to have for go-to-market. So I think those are the two things that have helped me stay sort of in sync and zen with trying to move fast.
No, I definitely would agree. So part of the role we play in product operations and simple practice is there's strategy involved in everything. And so as much as we want to do a lot of research and try to get the correct answer first, there are other timelines that are involved. And so there are other projects that may have reliance on another project being finished. And so seeing that sort of the entire board of what's going on across product and helping everybody understand, like, you need to like sort of help quickly wrap up your research and go with your best guess at this particular moment based on what you've learned so far, so that you can start then putting together the project plan and the stories and everything we need in order to build the things, because you have this other group that's waiting for you to do your work because they want to release something also. So for us, it's about that constant communication, all being in alignment with what everybody's doing across all of our product teams, and just really helping them understand, like, here's the strategy we're moving towards, here's the milestones we're trying to reach, and then ultimately just saying like this is the plan we need to go with in order to make all of this work, or else there are going to be some significant delays that could cost us X amount of dollars. So as long as everybody feels informed about like what the ultimate outcome is going to be like, everybody gets on board and with that sort of process and say, okay, I understand why I need to move quickly here. I need to complete this work here so that then this team can do it. So it's just keeping everybody in alignment, telling them what the ultimate outcome is, and then really helping keep track of what's going on so that we can actually hit all those milestones we're talking about.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, we've got probably one last question here, and then a reminder to everybody to throw those questions into Slido if you have them, and we'll get to those in just a second. But where do you two see the future of product-led growth going forward, both for B2B and B2C?
Yeah, I think speed's going to continue being, we live in a world, at least, everywhere, B2B, B2C, where we need things right away, right? And definitely in the B2B world, we talked a lot early in this conversation about the decision-making process, but I think that decision-making process is going to continue to move faster, and the problems will still exist, in businesses, and they're gonna need a solution ASAP. And so I think companies and products, I think, need to stay up to speed with how fast even the B2B world is moving. B2C, I imagine, is similar. So yeah, I would say speed. And then I think just the competition's gonna, I think, getting more fierce from both a packaging perspective. I think we'll continue to see, this is getting more into the tech space, but probably more tech stacks and, like, again, platform I don't think is gonna go anywhere. AI, ML, I think that's gonna continue to evolve. Yeah.
I think for us, on the B2B side, we're investing a considerably more amount of time doing a lot of research. Traditionally, in the life of Simple Practice, we've built items based on the loudest customer that has raised their hand and said, like, we need this as part of our platform. And so now we're taking the time to really think through what those customers are telling us. They have some great ideas, but it ultimately is not going to be in their best interest if we build it, or Simple Practice's best interest. So we're really taking that time to do the research to really see, like, how big of this functionality that we're about to build can help and service multiple people. So there's a lot of, what is our serviceable audience that we can address there. So for us, I think on the B2B side, it's going to be about just research and making sure you get it right. On the B2C side, I kind of see it more like, we did a lot of work doing a lot of personalization. I think that's still going to be a strong message. As you sort of like weave, as a customer weaves through their interactions with your business, you're going to pick up on all these different cues of what they're really looking for. So I think if you stitch all of that together, like they touch this, they touch that, to then ultimately build out the products they want, I think that is going to be a big win for a lot of companies that sort of pursue that approach. So I think on the B2C side, definitely personalization. On B2B, it's going to be more research to make sure we're getting the product right for our customers.
Okay, awesome. All right, we've got a couple questions here, so I'll kind of go through them. But Abel, you mentioned using customer research to tighten messaging and positioning. How do you reinforce the brand promise back to the product experience, tying those two things together?
Yeah, definitely. So right now at Simple Practice, our product marketing team, they're working our sort of our go-to-market strategy and really trying to reinforce different messaging for different personas that we have. So we've done a big, huge persona research project that was just recently completed. And so from that, we're understanding like what really resonates with this persona and this persona and this persona. But part of that also is there's messaging for certain parts of the life cycle of a therapist who's using our platform also. So we have to take that into consideration as well. So for us, it's speaking to the personas that they want. So that's how you really reinforce the message after you've come away with like, how am I going to talk to this person? So you reinforce like what the needs of this persona is, you reinforce what over here, and then you also reinforce that message based on where in the life cycle of their career like a therapist is, and you talk to them about that moment in time. So that way you're sort of continuously building up as their career progresses and they're using more functionality within our platform. So take advantage of all the different touch points you have to reinforce different messaging at different points in their careers, as well as the persona that they fall under also.
Okay, awesome. Super interesting question, and you can upvote questions too if you like them, and we'll get to some of the ones that go up to the top. But how do you validate the total addressable market, the TAM? Because it's really interesting. Like, what steps might you take outside of publicly available data, and how granular do you get? It's an interesting one. What experience do you have in it?
From my experience, outside of the normal public data, I've relied heavily on product marketing and research. I know not every company is fortunate enough to have a full research team, but those are the two stakeholders that I've typically relied on to help define the TAM a little bit more, and mostly PMM though, I would say, and it's really, I guess, tactics have been just through surveys, through just strategically, what markets are we trying to tackle. The company I'm at now, Klaviyo, what I would consider not an international company. We really only focus on North America and Europe. And so we are trying to tap into more of the South American market. And so, we're doing a lot of research, mostly through product marketing on those markets. What are the needs? You get into pricing and packaging is a lot different in Brazil than it is in the US, for example. So, I think it's really relying on those stakeholders, really to get that data.
Yeah, definitely 100% agree. Our product marketing team is doing several studies for us right now that are going to help us address this TAM. Like we're going through a very strategic project right now. A lot of it is surveys and everything. The other part is like everybody at Simple Practice has such large networks at different companies. Like we're kind of relying and having those private conversations with everybody. Like, okay, what are you seeing from your side of the market? And sort of really relying on adding those pieces of information to the studies that we're doing so we can get that larger picture of what's really going on and really understanding like, okay, this is really what our market is going to look like that we can address. And so it's just a combination of just qualitative and quantitative studies, using your networks and having those conversations, and then putting that whole package together to realize what your total addressable market is going to ultimately look like. So,
okay, super interesting. Another one here. If the TTV, so if the time to value isn't the same as that aha moment,
Yep.
what clarifying qualities does it have that distinguish it, and how do you validate that outside of an internal assumption? So we may have like an internal assumption about what that time to value is and that aha moment, but how can we validate that?
Yeah, so for at least my experience with my teams, we have seen time to value as almost a repeat aha moment, I guess. That's how we've defined time to value, is they hit the aha moment when they do, and then are they actually coming back? And how long did it take them to hit that? So I think that's really how my teams have handled that. I'd love to chat after also if there's other opinions, but I think some other qualities really how we validated that assumption. Again, we've used a lot of just journey mapping exercises, as straightforward as that sounds. A lot of just studies as well, just watching people interact with things. We've used user Zoom, a couple other like research tools that you can actually watch their interaction with things. So I think there's a lot of ways you could go about validating that. But
yeah, I think I mentioned earlier that we have sort of these customer councils that we're establishing. We have different functionality within our platform, and so we have different customers who can really help us validate those internal assumptions that we're going for. They'll give us great feedback, and they'll tell us like, no, this is a bad idea. No, this is a great idea. Like, hurry up and do things like that. But a lot of our internal assumptions, for the most part, actually will change quite a bit from those discussions, because we look at it from one perspective, but from them, they're using this platform on a daily basis, and they may have a different way of going about how they do their work on a daily basis. So that feedback is essential to sort of the things we're building out and moving forward, and we're trying to actually grow these customer councils to cover a lot more different areas. And so I think that is going to really help us understand like what this is going to look like ultimately. So once they get past that aha moment, what's the next aha moment they're going to get? And so having that feedback from those customer councils is pretty vital to us right now.
Okay, awesome. All right, last one, and then we'll wrap it up. The B2B approach versus B2B2C, and how that ties in with potential marketing messages. I guess thoughts on that?
That's a tough one. So we have, while we do have a lot of our work at Simple Practice is B2B, we have another another team that's actually working on our B2C approach also. And so there is a lot of communication that needs to go back and forth between these two teams. So one team is focused on the platform, building out the functionality we need for our customers who are our clinicians doing the work of helping others. And then there's another part of our business that's actually trying to map out and like almost like a dating app, like match people together to say like you're searching for some type of therapy. this is the therapist that we think you should align with and speak to because they have a specialty in this, what you're looking for. So when it comes to that alignment between B2B and B2C, like our one team that's doing B2B, they're focusing on building the products, but at the same time, our B2C component of our group is trying to really understand, like, how can we take full advantage of the B2B stuff so that way we can address it with our B2C customers and getting them to do that match that will ultimately lead to like 5 other things that we want them to do. So there's all this constant back and forth between the two teams that has to occur in order to take full advantage of the functionality that both teams are building. And if we don't have that alignment, then our outcomes are gonna be drastically different. So I think for us, it's just that 100% alignment between the two groups and making sure that we're all marching towards the same direction for that outcome we're seeking.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Mike, Abel. This has been a great conversation.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give you two a round of applause.
Kyle, thank you.
All right.